Well, former Bank of England committee member David Blanchflower has a very different, in fact, almost completely opposite view. He says that cuts to public spending and tax hikes are inevitably going to lower economic growth and raise unemployment. He believes Greece is evidence that such austerity measures aren't the solution, and the UK's austerity budget should be scrapped, as this would encourage companies to boost hiring and to spend more. Well, I'm delighted to say that I'm now joined on the phone by David Blanchflower, the former MPC member and now Bloomberg columnist. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It is fair to say that you're almost diametrically opposed to George Osborne. I think he did say yesterday that if we didn't, if somebody like you perhaps didn't like what he said, that they could come up with a different view. So tell me yours.
Well, actually, I have come up with a different view. I have the view that actually the strategy that Osborne has put forward actually has no real basis in economics. We have no examples in the world where it's worked. I mean, Osborne's given examples like Canada, but Canada was able to cut monetary policy and had a country to the south which was booming. So we're not in this position. It seems to me a very dangerous position to go to. We have no evidence that once you cut like this in the way that he's described, that this will actually impact growth positively. What it'll do is it will lower growth. And I was very struck by his speech that he gave at Bloomberg yesterday, where he said the actions we took in the budget have removed the biggest downside risk to the recovery, a loss of confidence. Well, that's abject nonsense. Actually, if you look at the data, from the time that the coalition was formed, business and consumer confidence appear to have collapsed. So exactly the opposite to what actually Osborne has claimed has happened. And once consumer and business confidence collapses and the fear of unemployment rises, people stop spending, and I think that's the great danger that we're going to see. Exactly the opposite of what Osborne says appears to be true in the data.
Well, what he would say, however, is that the markets would have punished the United Kingdom if he hadn't taken those measures to cut the deficit. And indeed, that would have actually been a terrible thing, because then it would have been even more costly to borrow and the deficit would have risen. Surely he's got a fair point there.
Well, the point clearly is one has to have a plan to deal with the deficit. That's absolutely clear. But the plan you need, and I think Alistair Darling's talked a great deal about this, the plan that you need is a strategy for growth, not a strategy to kill off growth. So once you have growth, that will generate revenues. And actually, there is considerable evidence around the world that tax cutting rather than tax rises are going to generate growth. How exactly you're supposed to be creating jobs when you destroy them? Your strategy is to destroy jobs so that you can create them. It doesn't make any sense. There's no economics for it. And ordinary people should understand it makes absolutely no sense at all to destroy millions of jobs and hope and pray that jobs will be created. But they've never been created like this before. No country in the world has ever done this before. And the great worry, of course, and Osborne's never managed to do this, is to say, and I've said it many times, what's plan B? What happens if the data starts to come in badly? And the chancellors refuse to answer that question, which is really very dangerous. What happens when the data starts to turn badly? And it's sort of appearing that that's true now. And when you read the minutes of the Bank of England's meeting this week, it's very dovish. They're very concerned about what's happening to output and what's happening in the surveys. So I think this is a very dangerous situation that Osborne's got himself into.
You talk about the job losses, something like 600,000 perhaps jobs will be lost in the public sector. The Chancellor's argument is that they will be mopped up by the private sector, and he points to the recession in the early 90s, where the private sector in the United Kingdom did provide an engine for growth. Do you not see parallels with that?
No, I don't really see parallels. I mean, one of the great things that one can do in certain normal periods, if you like, is if you are cutting fiscally, you can actually loosen monetarily. You have an ability to lower interest rates. That's the first thing. We have no ability to do that at all. And then the question is, what's happening to your trading partners? What's happening around the world? And then finally, what's happened to banks and credit? And we still are in the situation where banks' balance sheets are not being fixed. Banks are not lending. They're not lending in the United States. They're not lending in the UK enough. And there's still issues in Europe. We've never had a situation like this, apart from in previous devastating times like in various depressions. So this is a great risk that you take with the British economy. And my view would be you should not be taking this kind of risk. And the worry, go back again, where's plan B if this is wrong? This is ideology-based rather than the sound economics. There is no economics whatsoever that justifies this, and I've called this potentially the greatest macroeconomic mistake for a century.
Now, today's minutes, having a look at them more closely, do you think that they show that the divide has deepened within the committee?
Well, I don't really think so. I mean, I think the minutes appear really pretty dovish. Vote of 8-1. The talk about a rise from sentence talks about a small rise. I think they really are. It's more dovish. It's moving a little to be concerned about what's happening in the data, and it still makes this rather a ridiculous statement, which is that the budget has actually reduced the downside risk because it's lowered the possibility of a hike in long-run interest rates. I mean, the evidence from Greece and from Ireland and other places is where you take these austerity measures as GDP gets hit, then the markets move against you and rates will actually rise. So here again, there's another example of sort of making up economics as you go along. There's no real economics to justify this. So my worry is through all of this is a great deal of wishful thinking, but they're certainly sitting and waiting, and I suspect both in the US and in the UK we're going to have to see very soon much more quantitative easing.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.